This is an ABC News special report.
Good morning. I'm Whit Johnson in New York. We're coming on the air with this breaking news because the Supreme Court has just issued a major ruling involving the Second Amendment and a gun control law created to keep firearms out of the hands of domestic abusers. The court asks if the government can prohibit people under domestic violence restraining orders from possessing guns. And just moments ago, the justices upholding the law intended to protect domestic violence victims. Let's get right to ABC News senior national correspondent Terry Moran, who's there at the Supreme Court. Terry, break down this decision for us among the justices.
It's a major decision, 8-1. 8 of the justices on board with a decision that limits the reach of the Second Amendment's guarantee of the right to bear arms. This is a Supreme Court that has been extremely friendly to gun rights claims. This case is different. This is a case involving a man who was under a restraining order for domestic violence. He had a weapon and had threatened his intimate partner with it. He threatened other people with it. He's discharged it in public. He was a danger, the court decided, and so disarmed him. He brought a suit saying that the reason he should not be disarmed is because the original meaning of the Second Amendment, back when it was passed in the 1700s, did not include domestic violence as a reason for disarming people. In this case, in an opinion written by Chief Justice John Roberts, the court rejects that argument. Roberts declaring that taken together, if you look at all of the evidence, he says, of the history of gun restrictions in this country, common sense suggests the same thing. When an individual poses a clear threat of physical violence to another, the threatening individual may be disarmed. And Roberts and the other justices who write go through the history, and what they're saying is essentially it doesn't have to be a one-to-one match, because clearly domestic violence was not a big issue in the 1700s. It was considered a private matter under law. Times have changed, and this case says that, yes, even under the Second Amendment, gun laws can change as well, with the principle being that people who are dangerous individuals found to be threatening others can be temporarily disarmed.
Terry Moran for us, thank you so much. Let's bring in ABC's senior Washington correspondent Devin Dwyer. And Devin, of course, this case brought by Zachary Rahimi, a Texas drug dealer who had a restraining order against him from his ex-girlfriend. He was challenging the ban as lacking historical precedent. Explain what that means in the context here.
Well, the Supreme Court, which just a couple years ago said, as Terry was talking about, that gun laws in this country can only stand if they have a historical analog years ago, back to the founding. And what Zachary Rahimi was saying here is that back several hundred years ago, there was no such law, no such ban on people like him. What the Supreme Court did today, though, is said that, in fact, it doesn't need to be that strict, that there can be a broader tradition of disarming people who are a dangerous threat to the physical safety of others. And I got to say, Whit, this is a big win for the FBI and the background check system. They tell me that since this law was in place in 1994, it's prevented the sale of 77,000 guns to people under these orders.
Wow, significant numbers. Devin Dwyer, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Let's go to ABC's legal contributor, Brian Buckmeyer. Brian, just tell us sort of the sweeping implications here and what this means from a practical standpoint for law enforcement and people who are trying to own these guns who shouldn't.
Yeah, so we're going to look both to the historical context, but also, as Devin was pointing out, the broader context of what we're trying to do when we're trying to ensure that the proper people are having firearms and not individuals who might be convicted felons, have warrants, might have open cases that don't allow them to have guns because of restrictions or because of substance abuse. And so now we're looking at this rule that came from Bruin, a case in 2022 out of New York, that created a standard of looking at the historical context to the direct letter of the law, but also the spirit of the law. I think that's what's coming through here, the idea of trying to keep citizens of all walks of life safe in the United States.
Brian Buckmeyer, thanks so much. Let's bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas. And Pierre, I know you have some other statistics to add here, but this really struck me from Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions. A woman is 5 times more likely to die from a domestic abuse situation if a gun is involved. That very much part of the question here.
This is an enormous relief for advocates for domestic violence victims. So far this year alone, 952 people have been murdered with guns involving domestic violence. Last year, over 1,900 people. So this involves lots of people who have been living in fear, who now will know that the restraining orders can keep people from having guns that have been, in many cases, abusing them.
Pierre Thomas, our thanks to you and our entire team. Again, that breaking news, the U.S. Supreme Court upholding the ban on guns for people under domestic violence restraining orders. We are going to return now to regular programming. For some of you, that's Good Morning America, and our coverage continues here on ABC News Live and abcnews.com. Then I'll be right back with our entire team at World News Tonight later this evening. For now, I'm Whit Johnson in New York. Have a great day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.